My name is Drew Tucker, and I am the director of jazz of the Jazz Road program here at South Arts. South Arts is one of six regional arts organizations um, that are spread around the world and each cover a different region. I'm sorry, spread around the country and each cover a different region of the country. We cover the 9 southern states. Then there's Arts Midwest, which is in the Midwestern region. Then there's Mid-America Arts Alliance, which is like kind of goes straight up the middle of the country, like Texas, up through sort of like Oklahoma, like Arkansas, et cetera. Then there's the Western Arts Foundation, or WestAF, and then there's Mid-Atlantic, Arts Mid-Atlantic, which is like your New York region. Then there's NEFA, which is New England Federation for the Arts. So we administer this grant. We are the primary administrators of the grant, but we do it in conjunction with them. So it's important that you know where you're located and where your regional arts organization is. And you could go and just Google regional arts organization. You'll get a map of all of them. And that will be really important, especially as you start to attempt to put together your tour, to route your tour, to be able to call them. They have jazz representatives at each one of those. And their main goal is to help you be able to identify locations if you need them. So it's important to be able to reach out. You can just call them and ask them for their jazz representative, or let them know you are from Jazz Road and that's what you're looking to do. So a couple little housekeeping things. Obviously, this is a webinar. If you do have questions, there is a Q&A button that you can, a Q&A page where you can put those questions. And then as soon as I'm done going through sort of like your the basic things, then we will go ahead and field those questions. So if you have specific questions, go ahead and use the Q&A box down below. Ask those questions. Hopefully I will answer some, if not most of them, during the course of this webinar. And this webinar will also, unless I completely stumble over my words, be posted on the website at jazzroad.org. Under the FAQ and resources page. So there's currently a webinar there. It's been doing good. It's kind of like been the best webinar so far in terms of information. So that one has stayed up, but who knows, this one may eclipse that one in terms of quality and information presented. That is always the hope. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We have Eric Rucker here too. By the way, Eric Rucker is the Assistant Director of Jazz here. Our names do rhyme. That was not planned, but it's pretty cool. So maybe we'll form a cool jazz group called Trucker. That was not funny. Where's the laughs? No laughs. It's rough when you're on a webinar. But anyway, but yeah. So if you do have questions after the webinar that are more specific that we didn't get to, you can email either of the two of us. Best to always email maybe both of us. I'm dtucker@southarts.org and he's erucker@southarts.org. So we'll do our best to be able to facilitate and answer that. We do have a couple more resources in terms of webinar-like things that are happening through the course of this grant cycle. This grant closes March 1st, and we will have an Instagram Live that'll hit on southarts.org. I'm sorry, southarts.org, like the South Arts Instagram. We'll do an Instagram Live Q&A. We'll also do a final Q&A the final week of the grant, which will be not next week, but the week after. And that will be sent out to everybody who has an application in process, no matter where it is. So if you open an application, you start an application, and you save that application, when we go to send out the information for that end of round webinar Q&A, rather I should say that end of round Q&A, you'll be informed about that, and we'll be able to get you onto that. So we do that so that in that last week we get flooded with questions, we get flooded with requests for information, and it's hard to get to everybody. So we do that so that we'll be able to get to hopefully answer your questions. So stay tuned for that as well. So with no further ado, let's start talking about Jazz Road Tours. And I'm going to cut to it, which is also, Eric, if you can pin me, or I should pin myself, I guess. I'm not sure for the recording. All right, there we go, spotlight, there we go. All right, cool. All right, Jazz Road Tours. Jazz Road is made up of two programs. There's Jazz Road Tours and there's Jazz Road Creative Residencies. Creative Residencies, the last round of Creative Residencies was January 2023 is when that opened. It closed around April or May 2023. The next one will be in January 2025, and that'll run throughout the spring. So it's like a 4-month project. It's a 4-month grant cycle, application cycle rather. So you'll have 4 months, but that's when that'll start, and that's when we give up to $40,000 to be able to fund a creative residency of your choice, a project of your choice, something that impacts community and impacts the jazz field and as well as your career. So, but that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the Jazz Road Tour program, and Jazz Road Tours is quarterly, and we run those cycles. This cycle is the spring 2024 cycle. We just yesterday we announced the winter 2024 cycle, and in that we award about anywhere between 7 or 8 up to as many as 15 artists every quarter. And on average, every year we give out about $850,000 or so to help artists tour. The first thing that I want to mention is that the goal of Jazz Road Tours is to fund the tour itself. So many people sort of, and that's what makes this different from a lot of other grant programs that will maybe fund the artist, or you'll present your artist vision and things that of that nature, your work samples, and they'll be like, wow, this artist is wonderful. We want to fund this artist to do the things that they do. In this case, we fund tours that are put together by quality artists, as opposed to funding a quality artist that in the future will put together a tour. I say that, and even though it seems like a minor difference, it's actually a fairly major difference in the fact that many artists are focused on their artistry, which is great. But most of the artists who are applying for a Jazz Road Tour, who make it all the way to the sort of the finish line of getting through the application and presenting all of their materials, are fairly high quality artists. The challenge is that some artists don't focus as much on really trying to nail down a tour. And that's really kind of where the work comes in, is putting together a tour in advance, not knowing whether or not you're going to be awarded this grant. And then the question may be, well, how am I supposed to put together a tour and talk to these presenters when I don't even know what I'm asking them for? I don't even know if I'm going to make XYZ dollars from this grant, or if I'm not going to make it and they're telling me they can pay me this, and I don't know if I'll be able to do that gig when they're offering me X, but I would be able to do that gig if I get the grant. And that is definitely a challenge. What I will tell you is that we do offer a lot of resources to help you to do that. One of the things that I always recommend is to obviously mention that this is what you're doing, and sort of mention and ask for sort of maybe 2 deals. Another thing to do is to go to our website at jazzroad.org, scroll down and go to the page about where jazz artists have toured. And when you go to the page where jazz artists have toured, you'll see a very interactive map that you can zoom in on that'll show all the places that all the Jazz Road artists have toured throughout the course of the life of this program. So here, if you check out the screen, you'll see you go all the way down past the touring artists, and right there it says, where have Jazz Road artists been? You click on that, and then it'll take you to this map. And here on this map, you'll see it by region. And if you click on a region you're going to, let's say you're going into Kansas, go ahead and click on Kansas, Eric. Right there, you see those 4 venues in Kansas artists have been to. You can keep clicking in, you can keep zooming in, and as you zoom in, click on one of those, and then right there, it'll pop up who's going there, when they're going there, and what space they're going to. So if you're trying to travel through Kansas, that'll help you to be able to maybe identify a space that's already had familiarity and already used to working with Jazz Road programs. And there's quite a few of those all the way around the country. Matter of fact, there's only a few states at this point where we have not been, and we're still working on getting there. As a matter of fact, another key tip is that as you are looking through this, if you look at states we haven't been to, trying to route yourself through those states or put a tour on through those states definitely makes for a very competitive grant. So that's the first thing. There's a couple of eligibility things. I don't want to spend too much time going through basic eligibility things, but if you are currently in a degree seeking program, be it undergrad or master's, or you're a full-time student, you are not eligible for this. If you are not paying taxes essentially in the US, then you would not be eligible. So if you're not a permanent resident or a citizen, you would not be eligible. And now, does that mean that every person in your band should be as such? And the answer would be yes, that is preferable. Some have been deemed ineligible by trying to use Jazz Road funds to fly people in from other countries, and that is not an eligible expense. So what we do recommend you do is really take your time and go through the eligibility portion of this and the guidelines, just to make sure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, because there's been unfortunately, quite a few applications that we get, I would say probably each round, where they just did not thoroughly read through the guidelines. And if you do have questions about those guidelines, feel free to reach out. There's always some valid questions that are going to be found. But for the most part, if you check out that, you check out the frequently asked questions, you will be able to sort of deem whether you're eligible or not. And there's questions that we ask at the beginning of the application for eligibility as well. All right, so what we're going to do is walk through the application briefly, and then we'll get to some questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all the questions that you guys have. So Eric, if you don't mind bringing up the application. Cool. So Eric, if you want to go ahead and walk through what you're doing.
Sure thing. So first of all, a lot of folks have probably trying to actually find the application. So I would recommend just the easiest way to do this that I have found is to just type in jazzroad.org, and that will bring you to the main Jazz Road site within South Arts. Scroll down and click on Jazz Road Tours. It was off to the left there a little bit. And then you can scroll down and down and down and down and down and down past the webinar registration to the application portal. And this is where you can log into Salesforce. And if you have not created an account yet, then that's the first thing you're going to have to do. So I'm currently logged in right now. I'm going to log out just to show you through that process. Once you see this page, you need to sign up for an account. And it is imperative for this particular grant that you register not as an organization, but as an individual. If you accidentally register as an organization, you will not be able to access any Jazz Road grants, whether that be the tours or the creative residencies later in 2025. Make sure you register as an individual. First name, last name, email, that's fine. Now, even though you register as an organization, that does not mean that, if you would happen to win the grant, that you couldn't run the funds through an LLC or some other formal business. Even if you have, even if your band is ran through, and if it's incorporated or an LLC or something like that, still register as an individual. But once you have done that, you'll receive all the emails to log in, and at that point, you will type in your information, and you will arrive at the main South Arts grant page. Now, this houses every single grant that South Arts has. But you'll want to go to funding programs, and you'll see, well, Jazz Road Tour Spring, because I've started one underneath my test account. At this point, you would click on that, and you would click on Start an Application. Now, if you have already started an application and you need to get back to it, you can click on at the top, My Funding Requests, and this will show you that you have an in progress application for. This is the Jazz Road Tour Spring. So if you've done one of these before, there's not a lot of difference. In the very beginning, we do recommend that you use Google Chrome. That is the browser that is the most stable for this right now. If you're having issues seeing the application at all, there's a good chance that you are not using Google Chrome. So I highly recommend that. And that even works on mobile devices from what I've experienced so far. Also, you're going to see at the bottom of each page the save button. I would recommend saving all the time. This application does not automatically save. So it's important that you just kind of make it a habit of hitting that save button as much as possible. You can always go back and make changes, but everything has to be saved first. This is the eligibility portion that Drew was speaking about. Once again, it goes through your age, make sure you're not a full-time student, just everything that he had mentioned. If you answer no to any of these questions, that means that you are ineligible for this grant. So we're gonna pretend like we are eligible, hit that save button, because that's super duper important. And then the first page is just going to be very simple contact information. Yes, I live at 123 Sesame Street. I thought that was a great location. I am based in South Florida, so that's why you see the South Florida location. And this is where you want to fill in your band's website. If your ensemble does not have a website, this little asterisk does mean that it is required. If you have a Facebook page or Instagram page, you can copy and paste that link in there. That's totally fine. But just something there is important. But at this point, you're just following instructions. I'm going to go ahead and continue. There are some other, overall, if you see the little asterisk beside the question, that means it is a required field. And if you do not want to fill out some of those fields, most of them have other or does not apply. As we continue on.
And before you continue on, go back up for a second.
Absolutely.
Thanks. All right, so you go back up here. All right, here's a lovely one, jazz style. You can select all the ones that apply. All right, and if there's other, you can put other. If you have a ethno, Latin, post-bop, traditional, hip-hop, gypsy, gospel, free jazz group, I mean, that's fine too. You can put all the ones that you would apply to it. I would recommend that you think about the work samples you're offering. So if you're offering samples and think about what you're touring. So a lot of times people always would, I know as an artist myself, I get like, yeah, I mean, I play jazz, but if you ask a jazz musician, they might be like, well, it's a little bit more funk, a little more hip hop. But if you ask the rest of the populace, which is 90% of the people that are buying tickets, they will definitely say it's jazz. So I try to think about the audience, because that's, again, this is where, when you think about, are you funding the artist or funding the tour? Yes, we're funding both. It's a collective, but this is about funding a tour. So when you think about what you're doing, where you're going to be performing, and how you would be sharing and presenting yourself to the world during this tour, you would want to, it kind of helps you to narrow it down when you think about that audience. So if you're playing, yes, you probably use, most artists, or a lot of artists, I would say, definitely use a lot of different styles, even within one show. One song might be in this style. You might have influences from different places. Your drummer might really come from more like a more gospel background, while there might be some way more bop harmonies coming from the piano player, and that's cool. But think about what that audience and where you're going and what those work samples are going to present, and that might be able to clarify this. Just selecting all of them isn't necessarily the best strategy when it comes to making the most competitive grant. But again, feel free to select as many as you'd like. Eric, you can continue.
All right. Once again, I'm going to save my work. Continue on to the next page. Click next. All right.
I'm gonna go through a few of these details. The tour name can just be your band name if you don't have like a specific album release, or like this is the Leaving Los Angeles tour, or the whatever the album name tour might be. So you could put whatever you want, or it could be the Drew Tucker's Southwestern tour. I would try to do some aspect of some sort of tour aspect. It also helps just to kind of keep everything together. Your tour start date. Now, here's a key point in terms of your eligibility. This must be a contiguous tour, which means that the dates must be contiguous, which means that they need to be close by each other. They don't need to be day after day. You're allowed, obviously, a day in between. And then, of course, if you're running into like a Monday or Tuesday and you're overlapping like a weekend through the beginning of a week, those might be slow days. So there is leeway for accommodating those slow days. And if there's more than 2 days, anything more than 3 days in between a show. So if you have a show on the first, you don't have a show on the second, third, or fourth, and then your next show is like on the fifth or sixth, you'd really have to make a decent explanation. And I'll show you at what spot you can actually do that. But it does weaken how competitive your application will be the more dates that are in between, because the goal really is to keep everybody out on the road, is to try to help artists and not have to go back home or stop and start. We also want to make sure that we're spending the money in the right place, right? So if you have 4 days of hotels or 4 nights of hotels with no music happening, that's not really the best return on investment, so to speak. So you want to make sure that you have as much action happening within those days as possible. So you're not just racking up per diems and hotel costs as opposed to performance fees. Your tour start date, your tour end date. Now, another point about this: if this is part of a larger tour, which is fully fine, which is great, make sure that you are presenting this tour as its own little microcosm. So we have had artists or artist agents who presented, for example, a budget or presented the dates of the tour as maybe like this month-long tour, and then said, well, we're only seeking for these 3, but the budget that they present is just the whole budget for the whole entire tour. So you've got a $60,000 budget for a month-long tour, and you're asking for $15,000 to make up for shortfalls or to make up for some spots that maybe those places don't pay as much. That again will severely weaken the weaken your chances at being competitive when it comes to the grant. So you want to be very careful. So the budget you present should really be just the shows and the costs around those shows that you are proposing, that you are requesting funding for. That is because you want to be as clear as possible for the panel. If there's 100 grant applications, you have to understand that each one of these probably takes about 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so to go through for each panelist. So the more clear you can be and the more they can see exactly what you're looking for, and the more they can say, yep, this budget looks great, these dates look really in line, it's very clear, and they can move on to the next thing. The more that they can spend time focused on the work samples, the more they can spend time focused on really more of the meat of the application. So anything you do to make the panelist life easier is always going to be a benefit for you. The tour summary. Going to give a brief example for your tour. So you're going to talk about why you're routing it, why you chose the shows. This is a good opportunity for you to really make an explanation for why you are taking this particular tour route, especially when you consider that one of the goals of the Jazz Road program is to help jazz get to areas where it's not commonly seen, really specifically rural areas, which means by census, I think under 50,000 people. But even if it's not a rural area, maybe there's a spot where there's like, man, there's no jazz clubs for 100 miles around the spot. So we're going to stop at a house, do a house party here. Or we're going to do this cool library that we kind of connected with, or whatever the case is. And the more of those you do, those definitely make for a more competitive grant, because it really helps us as Jazz Road, as a program, to be able to reach our goals for our funders. So that's really important. Now, does that mean that all of your shows should be rural shows? No, because we also want to make sure that you're building your career. And obviously, if all you're doing is house parties in the middle of nowhere, you're not really going to be very successful to that end. You're going to be doing these house parties. It's going to be great. And maybe it has some effect, maybe it doesn't. But for the most part, it most likely will not have the impact on your career as if you were able to be like, man, I can't believe we got out to, I live in whatever, Arkansas, and I would never think I was going to be able to get to go out to play Blues Alley. And now I can get out there because I was able to fund these 4 other shows on the way out there, which would have paid nothing without this tour, so to speak, right? So that's an example. Not sure if it's the best one, but hopefully that makes some sense. And so typically what I say is, if you're doing a 6-show tour, if you do 2 for you and 1 for us, so 2 of those shows should really focus on being shows that are kind of off the beaten path, shows where you're really putting some effort into trying to push jazz into different areas and try to expose new people to this beautiful art form. Yeah, so there's that. So touring history now, which to describe your touring history. And again, we try to cover all of them here. Never toured, plays local regularly, toured some, toured a lot, tours regularly. Band has never toured together, but all the members have touring experience. That's a pretty frequent one. And this helps us to really appreciate what you're doing, how important this tour is for you in your career. And which you can answer on the next question, which is career elevation. Like, how will this elevate your career? Now, give that one some thought. Obviously, it will elevate your career by exposing you to new audiences. It will obviously elevate your career by, being able to play some places you might not have been able to play before. But this is an opportunity for you to be personal and really make sort of a plea to the panel and say, hey, listen, I have this situation. I've wanted to tour for this, or I'm in this particular situation. This is who I am. This is what I play. This is what I'm about, and this is what this tour will mean to me. What it will mean to my career, and also, and this is the key point, is this is how I plan to use this tour as a jumping off point to continue to build my career. What we really want to see, and we is the impact that this tour can have on your future career. Not just, well, I'll get to make, $6,000 on this tour and that'll fix my car. So that'll be great. But how is this tour going to be able to, how are you going to use this tour to be able to sort of build legs? What's your plan for after this tour? What are you trying to do with your career that this tour could be a linchpin in helping you to achieve? That's a key point right there. Obviously, tour desired outcome. This is where you can put all these types of things. This is just trying to see where you're at, what you're trying to do. If you have other, then here's where you can write it. And this is an explanation. Also, just because the character limit is 2,500, if you can say what you need to say in half that or a third of that, that's fine too. Don't feel like you have to write 2,500 characters in all of that. And if you need to, great. Just make sure you're saying something that's meaningful. Community activities. Really, to be clear, Jazz Row does not fund community activities, but when you're doing community activities around the performances that are being funded, it does help to make your application more competitive, because usually our data has shown that when you do like a workshop at a school, for example, on the afternoon before you have a show at night, your attendance at night will increase, because a lot of those students will let their parents know. Parents will come with their families. They'll come check you guys out. So that helps. It also helps us to know that you're really doing the work within that community. But when you do that, and this is really important, do not put that workshop on your budget. So, because it's got to be really clear that that's not what we're funding. So if you are asking for XYZ dollars, now, if how you'd like to do that budget internally is really up to you, but we just want to make sure that that workshop is not being overtly funded by Jazz Row Tours. Now, if they're paying you $500 for the workshop, that's great. You can use that as you're maybe right here and you're explaining, or your tour routing, or how you're going to pay for things. If perhaps things wouldn't make so much sense on your budget without that, then there will be a spot here you can put it, or you can put it at the end. There'll be a spot at the end for you to be able to explain anything that may need clarification at the very end of the grant. So is this tour part of a larger tour? Okay, tour routing logic, that's self-explanatory. If you are an agent, or if you're having an agent apply for you, please make sure that they explain the logic with a relative amount of detail, because we have had applications that were like, this is agent routed, still working on it, gonna see what turns up, things like that, and that will immediately decrease the competitiveness of your grant. Cool. Promo photo, preferably not one from 20 years ago, preferably a recent one is always good. So you'll add those files. What else we got? So, did I miss anything on that, Eric?
No, all good so far. Yeah, just to kind of put some more emphasis on that. So if you are awarded this grant, we would use these photos for promotion. So please make sure they are high quality. And yeah, please make sure they're high quality. That's all.
But yeah, that's definitely true. But we'll also say that after you do, there will be a time where, let's say, for example, you don't have a photo with the exact band together, but when you get the grant, you're going to get some photos. There will be a window of time. Won't be a large window, but there'll be a few weeks of time in there where, if you want, when you find out if you have received the grant before we post it and start doing all the things, if you get new pictures, you can share them with us. And if we get them in time, we'll be able to switch it up. But yes, please send some high quality photos. All right, so now we're on core venues. So the venue details. This is, if you remember in times past, we used to make you have to get a signed offer letter. We no longer require you to get a signed offer letter because it just seemed like it was more of a chore on behalf of the presenter, that almost some of the feedback we got from presenters was that it was kind of a pain because they weren't in the habit of using offer letters, which is true. I mean, most of the gigs you'll find at a local club usually don't give offer letters. It's usually reserved for either larger theaters or festivals. So in order to sort of get the information that we needed, we included all of the information on the offer letter in this venue detail. The reason why we're asking for all this information is because this is not a tour that we put together for you. This is a tour that we have to be sure that will happen when we award the money. And the more details you can get about what's happening at the venue, it's good for you. And it should be a habit you're in anyway, to know if you have backline, what the backline is, what are they feeding you, what are they not feeding you, are they including what's the green room included in, what snacks will be there, what drinks will be there, what do they provide free drinks, is there someone collecting your merch money for you and handling merch that they provide, you have to provide that thing. Those things will help you, but also they'll show us that these are very serious venues. These are very, you've done your due diligence. This tour will happen. And that's really important to be able to gauge the viability of the tour. We need to know that you're collecting this information. If the only information you're collecting is like, yeah, they're giving us $1,000. I mean, that doesn't exactly inspire the most amount of confidence when the panel is looking and saying, okay, is this going to happen when they get this grant, or is it going to be something where now they're going to get the grant and then have to call up and find out this information? And what then happens if you didn't budget for renting a drum set and then you didn't even know, and now you need to rent a drum set, and now you're like, man, we just lost $300 because we didn't realize we're gonna have to backline a drum set. We thought they were going to be able to do it, but we didn't ask the proper questions. So venue detail, the name, city and state, what kind of venue is it? Kind of self-explanatory. As we kind of move down, notice that there's all sorts of venues that are offered: an artist space, community center, church, embassy, gallery, museum, listening room, library, house concert, open air market, and then other. So it's really kind of wide open. And I know there's a question about that. I think one of the first questions that were on there, and we'll get to that, but all of these things are sort of wide open. And then we have the capacity and the community type. And those, go ahead and select some of that drop-down menu. Community type, is it rural? Is it urban, suburban, isolated? All you have to do is you can go and Google the population, and if it's put where it drops into this. There have been times when people have put rural for a city that is very obviously not rural. I don't think LA has less than 50,000 people. So that was kind of funny. We're like, hopefully they did that on accident. But they know that we're looking for rural, so it's always like, were they just trying to hope that we weren't going to sort of put two and two together? It's a quick Google search and you'll find out. So go ahead and make sure you guys do that diligence. So let's see, community served, what kind of community is being served? Again, these things can be researched, or even better yet, you can call the venue. You can usually talk to the ticket person and say, hey, what kind of people come to this place? Is it older people? Is it younger people? Is it a lot of couples? Is it a date night type of crowd? This is important. Pass this grant. This is such a useful tool for many reasons. Number one, when you are talking to a presenter and you say, hey, what kind of people come here? I really want to make sure I market to the crowd that's coming here. They're going to know you're serious. It's just going to enhance your capability to be able to pull people to the presenter. And I say this as somebody who also has spent quite a bit of time as a presenter in South Florida as well. And also on top of that, it's going to, again, help you to be able to know how to market. If I can tell you this for a fact, the same type of club, jazz club, with the same type of aesthetic, same capacity, is going to draw a very different crowd in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, than in West Boca Raton, Florida. If you market the way that you know you'll be successful in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, in West Boca Raton, Florida, you will not get the same turnout, because the community that is served in West Boca Raton is likely octogenarian retirees. And the community that is served in the heart of Atlanta is likely young, multicultural, multilingual, more used to seeing a certain type of flyer, maybe something that has a little bit more sheen to it, as opposed to what you might do in a space like West Boca. I use those because they're two very drastic things, but even just the ask is really important. It's something I truly, I know has been successful for many of the artists, myself included. It's something that's been successful for many of the artists that have applied, and it's also been successful for myself and a lot of my colleagues as well. So it's something that also, again, will show it's going to help you even more than it's going to help us to be able to see that you're doing it. So venue contact, name, email, this is important. It's come in handy for us. We've been able to help sometimes connect artists. It helps us to gather this information so that we can also reach out if we have to. And sometimes we have had to, just to show that the grant was happening, to maybe help explain when necessary. Show details, show dates. All right, first time performance. Go ahead. What's that drop down? Yeah, yes or no. So how many times have you played here? What's the door time? What's the performance time? These are important things to know. Event festival name, any other acts that might be performing on that same ticket. Is there a backline? What backline are they providing you? Is there merchandise? Now, are you responsible for selling the merchandise, or is the venue responsible for selling the merchandise? It's also important. Production details. So these again are not, this particular part is not mandatory. If there is a production contact, a lot of times it might be the AV person or the person who's doing the audio, like your tech, the guy who's going to be there for your load in. This is important information. If you do end up using the tour manager, this is the stuff that usually just, boom, you just print the stuff up, hand it to the tour manager. They know how to make sure that they contact them with your arrival time and any other details. Travel to the venue, provide a hotel rooms, all this stuff is fairly self-explanatory. Any other activities beside a performance? Will there be a Q&A afterward? Will there be a VIP? Is there a meet and greet? You can describe those things. Now, ticketing structure. This was, I do believe, one of the questions. So what will be the ticketing structure? Is it cover charge, pay what you can? Is it free? Or is it other? You can describe it there. Now, so here's an opportunity underneath that. Yeah, here's an opportunity underneath that where you can provide details about whether it's firm or tentative. If all of your gigs are tentative, it raises questions. If you have 6 shows and one of them is tentative, 2 of them are tentative and 4 of them are firm, then it's a good opportunity for you to, at the end, you'll have an opportunity to maybe explain that. So go to tentative. Click tentative. Okay, cool. So you indicated as tentative. Please certify by checking the box that you understand that this offer must be firm prior to any award. So we will clarify that with you and see where you are in the booking process, and you will have some time before we announce it to anybody else to make that offer firm. Now, if you have a door fee or some sort of other creative offer situation that's kind of going on here with the offer amount, with the ticketing situation, then a usual equation, and I guess we could do this. A usual equation is, let's say you're making 50% of the door and it's $10. It's $10 ticket and you're making $5 per ticket. And the venue holds 100 people. I would do $5 a ticket at 50 people and make that the offer amount. And that's the usual way to do it. I would budget for that. And another way that you can do that, if you feel like having more details, again, when you talk to the presenter, say, hey, what does the usual Friday night bring in? Man, we usually get about 60 people here on a Friday. Then you can probably take that down. I always recommend that you estimate on the lower end, and yeah, and that's how you would be able to do that. If it's free, if there's nothing, if you're doing a house party and you're not charging anything, then obviously you just put it's a free gig. Now, all these shows, whether they're house parties or no matter what they are, must be open to the public. So please make sure that they are marketed to the public. And so even if you do a show at a school, that is a viable show if that show is open to the public. All right, moving right along. Also, you will have to make sure you have 3 to 6 venues. I do believe we clarify. We had a challenge last round where if you added a venue and then realized you didn't have it, right? Eric, could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So at this moment, you'll see that on the venue page, there's 3 exact forms like Drew just walked everybody through. And of course, because it's a 3 venue minimum, you have to have all those completed. If I scroll down to the very end here, let's say that you have 6 venues, right? You're going to click add item and complete 3 more of these venue sections for each venue. If for some reason, and we've like he was saying, we've had this problem in the past where maybe there is an accidental venue added or something weird happens, just email me, erucker@southarts.org. I can remove any kind of erroneous venues from your application, no problem. Just shoot me an email and we'll take care of it.
Yeah, awesome. Let's move right along. Cool. You can download the budget form right here. That you can use that budget form. It's preferable that you use the budget form that we have. You can make whatever edits to it you want. But if you have your own budget form or own way you'd like to do your budget, that's also fine too, as long as it's clear. And again, as long as it's very clear what you're requesting funding for. All right, you can keep going down. All right, tour coordination support. So you can include up to $2,500 for tour coordination support in your request, as long as your total funding request doesn't exceed $15,000. So that means that if you get up to 12.5, then you can request up to $2,500 for tour coordination support. Now, what that means is that these are non-musician personnel and expenses not directly related to you successfully pulling off your tour. Most people will use that for a tour manager, a social media person, a videographer, but this can also be used for, and we have explicitly stated this now, this can also be used for childcare. So if you have children at home and you're like, man, how will I be able to do this? If you have a child who you want to bring on the road and you want to bring someone along to be able to be a caregiver for that child while you're playing, etc., stay at the hotel with your child. Or if you are leaving a spouse or a significant other at home with a child and you need some help to be able to pick up the slack for you while you're gone on the road, then that is also an eligible expense to be able to say, I need this help with childcare while I'm gone, so that my significant other, my partner, does not have to take time off work, because then if now you have somebody who can't work for days while you're gone, it kind of defeats the purpose, or at least dilutes the purpose of you being able to go on tour in the first place. So we are hoping that will encourage people with families. It's also for caregiving. Some people are taking care of elderly parents as well, that they may need assistance during the time that they're gone. At this time, it does not apply to certain other aspects, but we'll take those on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, we're hoping that this will help people, especially people with young families or people who are deciding, like, is it time for me to tour or time for me to start a family, that maybe this might be able to assist in being able to do that. So we're really excited about that and hope that even if it doesn't affect you, if you know somebody who might be being like, man, I would love to, but I got these kids, and I really got to make sure that's my priority. I want to make sure that they're getting what they need, that this might be able to help them be able to do both. So, all right, we can go to the next one. All right, work samples. Work samples must be videos, must be YouTube or Vimeo. YouTube is preferable. Please make sure that your work sample is reflective of the group you're trying to tour. I'm going to say that one more time. Please make sure your work sample is reflective of the group you're trying to tour. That doesn't mean you need to have the same personnel. It just means that the instrumentation should be the same as the group you're trying to tour. So we have had some instances where someone's maybe touring, requesting a tour for a quartet, saxophone, piano, bass, drums, but then they submit a work sample that's them with a big band, or them with a string orchestra, or them with just them and a piano, etc. And we're looking at these and they're beautiful pieces of music, but it doesn't show us what's going to be toured. So it essentially, while it doesn't make it ineligible, it does make it really hard for the panel to gauge the quality of the group and see what's actually being presented. So that's a really important aspect. Again, only YouTube and Vimeo will be accepted. Please do not drop a YouTube of your whole Spotify album on a YouTube, because it will most likely not get listened to. Especially if that, again, is an album that is not representative of the group that is going to be touring. So you have two vocalists and a guitar and a piano and bass and the drums, but your album is vocal and piano. That won't help. But for your application to be the most competitive, a video. It doesn't have to be the quality of the video is not as important as the fact that it's representative of what you're doing. So if you're like, man, I really want to tour this new project, we've been gigging a lot, set up your cell phone on a tripod and record something. As long as, if it sounds decent, you can balance it out with something else. But if necessary, if the sound's not right, but do take the time. And again, it doesn't have to be the same personnel. You could switch drummers. The drummer doesn't have to be the same drummer as the drummer you're taking on tour. But if you have drums that you're saying are going to be on tour, and make sure your work samples have drums in them as well. So that's really key. All right. Venue payment explanations. This is an opportunity for you to provide why you're asking for what you're asking for. So, and this is really one of those things this page is kind of one of those things that is for us. Don't stress about this part. This part doesn't go to the panel. This part is for our data, so that we can see, let's see what artists are finding to be the equitable pay, and see what venues are paying and where that differs, so that we can do what we can to use that research to go back to our funders and help us to be able to bridge the gap, or to be able to provide more better educational opportunities to presenters, et cetera. So, and this anything else portion, this is the part where if you were like, man, I got to do this, or I got to present this, or the work sample is a little bit off, or, the budget, I'm trying to explain this, where do I have an opportunity to do that? Or, man, I really need this and I really want to make a plea from the heart. This is the point where you can do that in this anything else. So if there's anything else that you feel like was not explicitly stated within the application process, or there's anything else that you really want to clear up, or there's just a plea, like a final, hey, this would mean the world to me. I know I said it earlier, but I just want to really reiterate this or that. This is the place to do it. Don't shortchange this anything else section. This anything else section has tilted a panel that was largely saying, you know what, I don't think that this artist or this tour is it. But then they get to that point and they're like, man, after reading this, I really kind of understand where they're coming from now. I think we should take another look at this package. And the panel will have looked and have changed it. And that has happened more than once. So please don't shortchange this anything else section. All right, I think that is the entirety of the situation. Agree to it. Go through all the other documents and briefs over here, any helpful hints that you need to, but after that, then you're pretty much good. So
yeah, quick reminder that all of this is taxable income. That's a question that some folks have wondered about in the past, but this is all taxable income. So do keep that in mind.
And to that end, no, you cannot put in your budget that you're saving 30% for taxes. So now how you use your individual tax money, how you organize your LLC, how you organize your finances is your business. We are not tax experts. We're not giving any financial advice. But if you put in your budget, 30% is going aside for taxes, you will weaken the competitiveness of your grant. Cool. All right. Let's get to some questions. I see Eric has answered a few of them already. And I will start from the top. How do grantees find venues? you help on that? The answer to that question is yes and no. The goal is for you to be able to find the venues, for you to be able to do the legwork. And we do have, if you were here at the beginning, we showed over at jazzroad.org, if you scroll down to where jazz artists have toured, there's a whole bunch of venues around the whole nation that are there on an interactive map that you can look at, and you can use those venues as a jumping off point because they're used to working with Jazz Road artists. They understand what it means to be able to that you're applying for this grant, that you may or may not get it. And I will also tell you that many of these venues have still renegotiated deals after artists did not get the grant to be able to help them continue to go on their tour. So these are really great venues, and for the most part, and are very amenable with working with Jazz Road applicants. So that's a great way to go. The other option is that you can call your local regional arts organization that's in your region. So you can Google regional arts organizations and look for the one that's in your region that represents your state. There are 6 of us. There's South Arts, which is us, which represents the southern 9 states. There is Arts Midwest, Mid America Arts Alliance. There's West Af, Mid Atlantic Arts, and NEFA, which is New England Foundation for the Arts. And based on where you are trying to go, you would say, man, I'm trying to go into Chicago, not really familiar with Chicago. You would call or write an email to the to Arts Midwest, ask for the jazz representative. They'll get on and they'll try to help you identify some venues and give you some contacts where possible to be able to find those venues. So there's that. All right, next question. How do you register a door gig, aka a performance, also known as a performance, in which payment depends on how many tickets are sold? It was hard to indicate that in the application when inputting individual gigs. It asks for a performance fee and won't accept anything except numbers. So I think this was an earlier question, so hopefully that was already answered within my explanation. But just to be clear, if you have a door fee, my recommendation, a basic equation, would be take what you're being offered, take half the venue capacity, go ahead and multiply that together and use that as your offer number. Will you be disqualified if a band member has to be replaced at the beginning of the tour? No, you will not. If you have been awarded that grant, shoot us an email. But if the instrumentation stays the same, it's not really necessary for you to let us know. As long as the information stays the same, we understand that band members do change, people's situation changes. So-and-so got a job, you can't leave it, etc. And those things happen. So as long as the instrumentation stays the same and you're not saying like, man, this drummer and bass player can't make it, so now we're touring as a guitar flute duo, that'll be a little bit different. One of my band members is a U.S. citizen but lives abroad and will fly in for the tour. Is his airfare eligible cost? No, it is not, because that will be, and I use this term loosely because it's not accurate, because it's not an investment necessarily, but it's not a great return on investment to use that much money for an international flight. Now, that being said, maybe there's another gig that you guys are doing in advance of that. Maybe there's a workshop that you're not asking for funding for that you can use to fly him over. That's not our business. But in terms of Jazz Road funds, those Jazz Road funds would not be best used. And you know what, let me not say that they would be ineligible, but it would definitely weaken the strength of your application if that was one of your budget items. Can a community jam session be included in the funding, or would that be considered a community event? It would be dodgy, but it would be more like one of those, what are other activities you're doing along with your performance? So I would say, let's say you're doing a 1 hour set, just your band, and then the rest of the night is a jam session. Then I would say that you're having the performance and other activities include a community jam session. That would keep your application strong. Is a road manager for driving, loading equipment, monitoring sound checks, and Is a road manager for driving, loading equipment, monitoring sound checks, and other duties an acceptable expense to be included in this grant? That would be an acceptable expense under the $2,500 that's allowed for tour support. So your normal expenses would equal up to less than $12,500 or less, and then you'd be able to use up to $2,500 for exactly what you're talking about. Is a grant writer expense allowed in the budget within that $2,500? Yes, it is. Do all the gigs have to be confirmed? Yes, they do. I am performing a unique group of female composers, which none of them play my instrument. Therefore, the music they wrote will not include my instrument. How should I choose the music? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. I think perhaps put it in email, maybe send it over. You send it over to us, and we'll be able to have a large dialogue about that. But I'm not 100% sure of what you exactly mean by that. If you're doing a tour and you just want funding for the last 6 shows, so the first 5 shows would not include the grant. What if you're doing a tour? Try this again. What if you're doing a tour and you just want funding for the last 6 shows? So the first 5 shows would not include the grant. That's fine. Just make sure that you're very clear in terms of what you're requesting money for. So it should almost be like a tour within a tour. So as you present this, you're presenting just those 6 shows. Now, if the budget don't line up, then you might, in some of those other areas where you can explain, if nowhere else and in the last anything else you want us to know type of narrative, that's where you would explain what's happening. But for the most part, you want to present those 6 shows and all the expenses that are around those 6 shows that you're requesting funding for as clear as possible. That those are the 6 shows that you are requesting funding for. Because if it gets convoluted and you can't, and the panel can't understand the budget, then it does weaken the application. You mentioned for longer tours to try to pitch a smaller tour within that tour. Do you mean that in terms of dates as well as monetarily? I am doing a 30+ day tour, but as of now, the dates are very spread out, although they will eventually be filled in, hopefully without any days off. There are also certain performances that are more appropriate for this grant, so I would like to emphasize that if possible, and those that are spread out, over the month. So I'll tell you this, that's tricky, and you're going to have to make a bet on which ones, on which way to go. What you can't do is say, I have a tour on Monday. I have a show on Monday, and this is a great spot that would be great for the grant because it's in a rural area and it would really read well on the application. But then the next one is 8 days away, and the next one is 2 days away, but the next one is another 7 days away. That would immediately make you ineligible. So you could say, I'm going to look for funding on these 3 shows or these 5 shows, and one of these is really great. Or you can say, I'm going to look at, there's a lot of spread between that show and the next couple shows, so I'm going to take these 4 shows that are already really eligible. They're one after the other, and these shows would be perfect. That's the kind of a choice you're going to have to make. But even if it is part of a larger tour, you will not be able to. Your application will not be eligible if you're too far spread out between shows, even though you may have shows in there that you're not seeking funding for. And so, yeah. Good. So I see we are good on questions. So big thanks to all the staff at South Arts that helps make this thing possible. Thanks to the Duke Foundation, the Mellon Foundation for their generous funding of the Jazz Field and of this program. Oh, we got more questions. Did you just answer that one, Eric, about the university? I didn't get to see it.
Yes, I did. They were just asking if it was possible to have a concert at a university on a Monday, and I said as long as it is a public performance, that is totally fine, totally acceptable.
Yeah. If you have a block of shows that fit the requirement, can a non-tour show be added in between if it pops up? Are you talking about before you apply or after you apply? Because if you say ask for $10,000 and you get awarded $10,000 for 4 shows, and then you have a day off in between, but then a show pops up, you cannot then go back and request more money for that show. If you get awarded the grant.
So this particular person said if they get it after.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't come back and ask for more money for that if it pops up in there. As far as what you want to do around the tour that's being funded, that's really up to you, as long as that particular tour happens. I hope that answers your question, Terry. yeah, hopefully that answered everybody's question. And we kind of got them in, and we will make some of this. What happens if you don't utilize all of the money granted to you? Then, I mean, I don't think that's ever been I don't think it's ever been a concern at any point yet. So, um, insurance is eligible if you need insurance. Like, what kind of insurance? You can't pay your homeowner insurance, Leah. Um, you should already have car insurance, but I'm not quite sure what insurance you're referring to, unless you're talking about liability insurance. If the venue requires you carry liability, yeah, liability insurance, then yeah, as long as it's not your annual premium that you're requesting funding for, as long as it's down to the tour itself.
Yeah, if you're requesting like a special event insurance, and you can find a company to do that, I mean, I think that would
Right.
be acceptable.
Yeah, but not just like a general liability, a monthly liability thing. But yeah, Mary, if uh it hasn't happened because usually the budget is so tight. People, what people are trying to do with their budget, and they're very down to the numbers that that hasn't happened. So it would be an odd thing, I
Yeah,
feel.
and I think to expand upon that a little bit, just I mean, from what I have seen with the panelists, they look for airtight budgets because just keep in mind that these panelists, they are all professional touring musicians themselves. They've been through this, they've done this, they know what to look for. So the more details you can provide, and the more locked in everything can be, the more competitive your application will be.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be, yeah. And also, if you make money, I think this is another question that's worth mentioning. If the gig is, what if you need 20,000? Do you just show only 15,000? Um, if you need 20,000 to make the tour happen, then you might, I mean, we only offer 15, it's only up to 15,000. And so if it's shows that you need 15,000, you have a $5,000 shortfall, then that really goes into question the viability of this particular tour. Now, if the venue is paying you, if you're making you're doing 5 shows and they're all paying $1,000, then that's fine. And then you're at requesting $15,000. There'll be a space for you to be able to share that, and that should be in your budget. It should be in your budget that you're requesting $15,000 if it goes past that.
Or could they also just ask for funding for a part of the tour?
Or yeah, or well, right. But again, I mean, my assumption based on that question is the fact that the expenses are $20,000 and they need $20,000, so they only ask for 15,000. And there's no money coming from anywhere else, then the tour won't be viable. It won't be. It kind of loses its efficacy if that's the case. So, and that becomes a challenge in and of itself. So, but yeah, but hopefully this was helpful. Definitely go and check out the budget template that we have that could help to allay any questions or concerns that you guys may have. Use that if possible. If not, you can go ahead and use whatever Excel based budget template you have. The more detailed you can be, the better. And please make sure it's really clear. We do wish all of you guys the best of luck. Again, keep an ear out to, or an eye out to the South Arts Instagram. We will be doing a live Q&A in about a week, a little under a week. That'll be a general Q&A. I'll just pop up there and be like, what questions you got? And so if you guys have some questions then, and then also if you do have an application in process, even if you just opened an application and filled out your name, you will be on the list. That's where we pull the list for the Q&A that we do in the final week for any artists who are applying, so that way we can answer any last minute questions in that last week. So don't panic. You don't have to hit us with a million emails. Know that there are these outlets for you guys to be able to ask these questions. But of course, please hit us with the emails if you do have something that's really pertinent. Maybe you're going back and forth with a presenter and you have a question that really needs answering. Please feel free to go ahead and ask us those questions. So thank you guys very much. Also, this is kind of a last thing. If you want to start an application but opt to wait till the next cycle, can the application be saved and started over? All applications have to be started over. So if you're thinking about doing that, I recommend that you guys take your information and put it onto a separate Word document so that you can just copy and paste it in later. And the reason why that is because every single cycle, we are always looking to improve the application, to refine it, to try to find ways to make it more accessible. So your old application might not be valid with the next one. Like in the last couple, we've made some pretty drastic changes, especially like right around the summertime. Like we completely revamped it. May happen again. So just I wouldn't bank on that. Also, you can also reach out. You know, I am on Instagram as well, so it's not a xylophone is the tag. That's another way to get in touch with me. But you know, so you can be able to reach out to me if you guys have any questions that way. So, all right. So thank you guys all for attending. We appreciate it. Good luck. All the best to you guys. And yeah, and you know, please keep us posted. Either way, whether you win or don't win, we want you guys to share what you guys are doing. And please keep applying. Oh, I will tell you this. One other thing. Sorry. Each cycle is vastly different in terms of the amount of people that apply, the demographics of the people that apply, and the areas and regions that the people are in that apply. So just because you don't get awarded one time, don't let that discourage you from applying again. Because there have been times where there are so many people and everybody's, you know, it's really heavily competitive. And then there's times when there's like, man, there's not that many quality tours that are put together, or wow, everyone applying is from New York City. And if only there were some people that weren't from New York City with some quality applications, because, you know, or whatever the case might be. So not only is the act of applying great for your career because it helps you to answer questions that you may not have thought of otherwise, but also you just don't know. There have been several people who have been awarded who have applied 2 and 3 times, and on the 3rd time it was like, boom, this is what we were looking for, this is what the panel was looking for, and were awarded the grant. So, and I think that's the case, should be the case with every grant you guys do. Don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen on the first try. Putting the work together, build the relationships with these presenters, even if you don't get the grant, if you did the work and the due diligence, you know, with the best of intentions, I can promise you that it will enhance your career moving forward, whether you are awarded the money or not. I mean, because 15,000 is 15,000 and it comes and goes, but being able to build the skills and the relationships that you have with the presenters, with and you know, understanding how to be able to put this stuff together, depending on where you are in your career, is priceless and will help you for the rest of your career. All right, awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great night.